The genius of this episode starts with misdirection, and I mean that in the best possible way. When you first see that bet pop up on the prediction market app, will Kyle's mom strike Gaza and destroy a Palestinian hospital? Your immediate reaction is probably the same as Kyle's: outrage, disgust, horror at the fact that people would even make a joke out of something so serious. But South Park isn't just commenting on the conflict here. They're commenting on how we've all been conditioned to treat global tragedies like sports matches, like entertainment, like something we can gamble on from the comfort of our phones. These prediction market apps, Polymarket and others like it, have exploded in popularity recently. And people are literally betting on everything from election outcomes to whether celebrities will get divorced to, yes, geopolitical conflicts. And the episode frames this perfectly through the kids, through their school, through the casual way Cartman sees an opportunity to make money off of Kyle's suffering. Because that's what's happening in the real world too, isn't it? People are profiting off of pain, off of uncertainty, off of conflicts that are destroying actual human lives. And by centering this story on Kyle, on his personal anguish at seeing his mother implicated in potential violence against Palestinians, South Park creates this incredibly uncomfortable mirror for the audience now. Here's where the history of the show becomes absolutely crucial to understanding why this episode works so well. If you've watched South Park for years, you know Sheila Broflovsky's track record. This is the woman who became Secretary of War in the South Park movie. This is the woman who whipped an entire nation into a frenzy and started a full-scale war with Canada because she didn't like the profanity in a movie that her son went to see. Sheila's righteous anger, her absolute certainty in her moral crusades, has historically led to catastrophic consequences. They're going to have Sheila bomb a hospital. And that's the brilliance of the setup. They're using your knowledge of the show against you, building this tension where you genuinely don't know if they're going to go there. If they're going to make Sheila the villain of this story, if they're going to use her past behavior to make some cynical point about Jewish Americans in Israel, but they don't. And that subversion is everything. Instead, when Sheila arrives in Israel, when she finally comes face to face with Benjamin Netanyahu, she unleashes one of the most scathing, articulate, and honestly necessary critiques of Israel's actions in Gaza that I've seen in mainstream American media. And it's coming from a Jewish character, from a mother, from someone who has every reason to want to defend Israel, but instead chooses to see the humanity of Palestinians, to see the horror of what's being done in her name and in the name of Jewish people everywhere. She doesn't mince words. She calls out the killing of thousands, the flattening of neighborhoods, the displacement of families. But more importantly, she calls out the tactic that Netanyahu and the Israeli government have used repeatedly to deflect any criticism, wrapping themselves in Judaism like it's a shield, claiming that any critique of Israel's government or military actions is inherently anti-Semitic. And Sheila, as a Jewish woman, as a character who has always been protective of her identity and her son's identity, completely dismantles that argument. The way she phrases it is so perfect, so cutting. You're killing thousands and flattening neighborhoods, then wrapping yourself in Judaism like it's some shield from criticism. This isn't just a line. This is the central issue that so many people, especially Jewish Americans, have been struggling with, because there has been a documented rise in anti-Semitism since October 7th, and Netanyahu's government has consistently used this rise in anti-Semitism as proof that criticism of Israel is motivated by hatred of Jews, creating this impossible situation where Jewish people who oppose Israel's actions in Gaza are somehow accused of being self-hating, where any critique is labeled as bigotry, where the actual safety and well-being of Jewish communities globally is weaponized to justify military operations that kill thousands of civilians. Sheila's speech cuts through all of that. She makes it explicitly clear that the Israeli government's actions are not protecting Jewish people. They're making life harder for Jews everywhere. They're creating the conditions for more anti-Semitism, not less. They're forcing Jewish people around the world to either defend indefensible actions or face accusations of betraying their own community. And this is where South Park's choice to use Sheila becomes absolutely inspired. Because Sheila has always been a character who acts from a place of protective maternal instinct, sometimes to destructive ends. She wants to protect Kyle, to protect her family, to protect her community. So when she stands up to Netanyahu, when she tells him that he's making life for American Jews impossible, it's not coming from a place of self-righteousness or political posturing. It's coming from a mother who sees her son suffering, who sees her community being torn apart, who sees the people she's supposed to share an identity with being blamed for atrocities they had no part in committing. The episode also does something really smart by keeping Kyle at the center of this emotional journey. His fury at the bet, his desperation to get it taken down, his humiliation and pain at seeing his mother reduced to a caricature of Israeli violence, all of that builds to this moment where Sheila vindicates not just herself, but him. That these things are not contradictory. That criticizing a government is not the same as hating a people. And for a show that's often accused of being nihilistic or both-siding every issue, this was a remarkably clear moral stance, while the Israel-Gaza commentary is obviously the emotional climax and the most headline-worthy aspect of this episode. The way South Park weaves that into the broader theme of conflicts of interest is what elevates this from a good episode to a genuinely great one, because everything in this episode, and I mean everything, is about people in positions of power exploiting their influence for personal gain while pretending to serve some higher purpose. And the framing device they use to explore this is absolutely perfect. Prediction markets and the revolving door between government regulation and private industry. Let me break down what's actually happening here, because South Park is referencing some genuinely insane real-world corruption that flew under the radar for most people. Polymarket, the prediction betting app that serves as the catalyst for the kids' storyline, was actually banned for U.S. customers by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission back in 2002. They had to pay a fine and were explicitly prohibited from allowing Americans to use their platform. Fast forward to early 2024, and Donald Trump Jr. joins Polymarket as a strategic advisor. And then, miraculously, just days after he joins, Polymarket is suddenly reauthorized for U.S. customers. The ban that had been in place for years just evaporates. Now, you don't need to be a political scientist to see what happened there, right? A guy with direct access to the incoming administration, whose father is about to have control over the regulatory agencies, joins a company that's under federal restrictions, and suddenly, those restrictions disappear. This is textbook corruption, but it's the kind that happens so frequently and so brazenly now that it barely makes the news. And South Park captures this perfectly by making the Don Jr. caricature, and yes, that's absolutely meant to be Don Jr., with that terrifying smile and that hairline. Not just Polymarket's strategic advisor, but also the CFTC's strategic advisor and the FCC's strategic advisor, the same person advising the betting company, advising the agency that regulates the betting company, and advising a completely different regulatory agency. It's so absurd that it loops back around to being barely an exaggeration of reality. And the brilliance is that they don't even name him as Trump's son directly in the episode. They just show you the character and let you put it together yourself. Probably because explicitly naming him would complicate the ongoing Satan-Trump baby plotline that's been running throughout the season. But everyone watching knows exactly who this is and exactly what South Park is calling out. The conflicts of interest are so blatant, so undeniable, that the episode literally titles itself after them. And this connects directly to the other major real-world event that South Park is addressing, the Jimmy Kimmel censorship situation now. If you haven't been following the story closely, here's what happened. After the assassination of Charlie Kirk, Jimmy Kimmel made some relatively mild jokes about it on his show. He condemned the assassination itself, made that very clear, but also made jokes about Kirk and about the response from certain political figures. And almost immediately, Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC appointed by Trump, publicly called for television affiliates to pull Kimmel's show. Not as a legal order, mind you, but as a very public suggestion from the head of the federal agency that regulates broadcast television. And wouldn't you know it, two major affiliate networks, Sinclair and Nexstar, immediately pulled Kimmel from their stations. Now here's where the conflict of interest becomes crystal clear.